You ever come back from a long trip, drop your bags at the door, pour yourself a cup of coffee, only to realize you've walked into a full-blown reality TV episode? That was me, last Tuesday morning. I'm Danny. I'm 35, run a boutique development firm in New York, and I'm not exactly known for my chill. Especially not when I see my estranged stepsister, Skylar, and her boyfriend hauling a flat-screen TV across my lawn, toward my guest house. I hadn't even taken my shoes off yet. There it is. Skylar shouted like she was on House Hunters. The cozy little inheritance Dad promised us. I froze mid-sip. My coffee went cold in my hands as I watched Skylar, smug as ever, directing her boyfriend, Wes like a general commanding troops. They looked like they'd just rolled out of a Coachella campsite and straight into my nightmare. Messy hair, beat-up van and all. Here's the thing, that guest house? Yeah, it's mine. Not like, technically mine or I've been staying there a while mine. No, deed signed, taxes paid, left to me in a will mine. It's part of the estate my late grandmother Ruth passed down. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who believed in keeping things official. She also saw Skylar and her mom coming from miles away. Skylar's not my sister. Let's get that straight. She's the daughter of my father's second wife, Veronica, aka the rebranding. After my mom passed, Dad remarried faster than I could say grief counseling, and suddenly, our family home was redecorated with crystals and incense, and no trace of my mother anywhere. Grandma Ruth never liked it, neither did I, but I played nice. I tolerated birthday brunches and forced smiles. Until now. Because this was war. One stepped out onto the porch. No hello, no warning. Just me, standing there like a ghost of reason while Skylar popped open a box labeled office stuff and said, "Danny, hey!" Mom said we could stay here until we get back on our feet. It's what Dad wanted, remember? I didn't answer. Just reached for my phone and texted one word to my lawyer. They're here. Sarah, my lawyer and unofficial guardian angel, called me back immediately. Do they have anything in writing this time? She asked, dry as ever. Nope, I said, watching. Wes nearly backhand my grandmother's rose bushes with his oversized duffel. Just vibes and spare keys they found. She sighed. Then we stick to the plan. See, Grandma Ruth had put everything in writing. She'd carved out very specific language in her will to make sure that the estate, including the guest house, was mine and mine alone. No room for reinterpretation. No. But Dad said, loopholes. Just solid, legally binding ownership. But Skylar didn't know that. Not yet. Don't confront them tonight, Sarah said. Let them feel comfortable. Tomorrow morning, the county assessor arrives. That's when the fun begins. As if on cue, there was a knock at the back door. 3 loud raps like she owned the place. We need the garage key, Skylar said when I opened it. The one Mom gave us only works for the front door. Wes needs somewhere to set up his workstation. Workstation, I repeated. For what exactly? He's doing a new crypto project, she said brightly. Kind of like Dogecoin, but with mushrooms. Right, naturally. I took a breath. Skylar, this isn't your property. I don't care what Dad said. He didn't have the legal authority to give away something he didn't own. Her face fell, then hardened. You're being selfish, Danny. You already have the main house, the company, the life. Why do you need to hoard this too? What about me? That's the thing about Skylar. Every time something doesn't go her way, it's a moral failing on your part. I could have reminded her about the time she asked Grandma for money for rent and used it to book a Bali retreat instead, or how she accidentally took my mom's vintage gold watch when she moved out, or how her boyfriend once tried to convince me to invest in a gourmet jerky NFT. But instead, I just said, "Property law doesn't care about your feelings." She stormed off. I closed the door, heart racing, and sat in silence. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew what was coming. The guilt texts from Mom, the emotional blackmail, the crying, the spinning of stories until I was the villain. Sure enough, that night, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Mom, Skylar's in a tough spot right now. Please don't make things harder. Mom, this could be a good bonding opportunity. Mom, your father would have wanted you to be generous. I ignored all of it, and instead, I got to work. I pulled up the file I'd been building for months, a juicy folder labeled Unauthorized Occupation, Skylar plus Wes. Inside were screenshots of texts, Instagram posts bragging about moving in soon, and even a badly photoshopped version of Grandma's will that they'd posted once in a private Facebook group for manifestation mentors. Oh yeah, I had receipts. The next morning, the doorbell rang at exactly 9:00 a.m. Enter Mr. Holden, a serious man with a badge from the assessor's office and an even more serious leather briefcase. He shook my hand, opened a file, and said, "I understand we're dealing with an unauthorized occupancy of private property." I didn't even have to answer before Skylar burst out of the guest house in pajama pants and UG boots. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Who is this guy?" "This is Mr. Holden," I said calmly, "and he's here to assess the current illegal use of my property." Skylar's face went pale, then red. "You're reporting me to the government for staying in my own guest house that Dad promised me?" "Step guest house," I replied, and again, Dad had zero claim over it. Wes came out behind her, blinking like a raccoon in daylight. My mom showed up shortly after in her bathrobe, trying to smooth things over, but Mr. Holden didn't care about family politics. He flipped open the deed, pointed to my name, and said, "This property was legally transferred to Danielle Ellis by Ruth Ellis in 2020. There is no documentation showing a subsequent transfer." "Mom," Skylar hissed, "what about the papers Dad signed?" My mother looked like she wanted to melt into the lawn. "He talked about it a lot," she said weakly, "but I guess he never filed anything." I looked at Skylar and said what I'd been waiting 6 months to say. "You don't live here. You don't own this. You are, legally speaking, trespassing." The next part was surprisingly satisfying. Mr. Holden noted every pizza box, every trampled rose, every piece of tech they'd plugged into my outlets. Skylar kept sputtering. Wes just stood there with his arms crossed and his ego deflating. Mr. Holden wrapped up and gave them a copy of the notice. "You have 48 hours to vacate the premises," he said. "After that, legal enforcement begins." Skylar turned to me, eyes full of fire and betrayal. "You're just like her," she said. "Grandma, cold and controlling. You always thought you were better than us." I tilted my head. "And you always thought the world owed you something. If you've ever tried to evict a manipulative freeloader who thinks manifesting positive energy gives them squatters' rights, then you know what the next 48 hours were like." The moment the county assessor left, the guilt campaign went into full swing. Skylar wasn't going down without a dramatic, mascara-streaked fight, and she had reinforcements. I got 5 missed calls from Mom before lunch. The 6th one I answered just to stop the buzzing. "Danny," she sighed like she was the victim here. "Is this really necessary?" I didn't even ask which part she meant. Kicking out her stepdaughter? Calling the county? Standing up for myself? All of it, she continued when I stayed silent. Skylar's been through so much. She just needs time. Time, I repeated. Mom, she's had 3 years of time, 4 jobs, 2 GoFundMe campaigns, and now she's squatting on property she doesn't own, acting like I'm the one out of line. She thought it was her inheritance, Mom whispered, as if that made trespassing okay. Well, I thought I was getting a sister when you married Veronica, the first snapped. Life's full of disappointments. That ended the call. The thing about Skylar was she had mastered the art of emotional shape-shifting. She could go from helpless waif to righteous victim to spiritual guru in minutes. It was like watching a Netflix series with too many genre switches. That night, I sat at my desk reviewing contracts for a new development site while outside. The guest house lights blazed like a college dorm. Music played. Laughter. At one point, I swear I heard Skylar chant abundance while burning sage. Wes tossed a box out the front door. I could hear it thud on the porch from my office window, then stomped around in a beanie and pajama pants like a man wrongfully imprisoned. Around midnight, I got another text from Mom. Skylar's crying. She says you called the police on her. I hadn't. Not yet. But, I was getting close. Instead, I sent Mom a photo of the property deed with my name in bold letters. No words, just facts. The next morning, I woke up to find Skylar sitting on my front steps, wrapped in a chunky sweater and false humility. "We need to talk," she said, as if we were co-parents of a toddler instead of owner and trespasser. "You have 1 day left," I said, stepping past her. "That's the only conversation I'm having." Her voice wobbled. "You don't understand how hard things have been. Wes lost all his clients, and I had to leave my healing collective." "We have nowhere to go. Healing collective." "You mean the pyramid scheme?" I said. Her eyes widened. "That was a sacred community." I bit back a laugh. "Skylar, you sold alignment crystals for $90 a pop and paid your rent in tarot readings. Let's not rewrite history." She stood abruptly, her faux vulnerability cracking. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Making us suffer. Grandma Ruth taught you to be cold." That actually made me pause. Because Grandma Ruth wasn't cold. She was just precise. The kind of woman who labeled her spice rack alphabetically and left instructions in her will about where to plant the hydrangeas. She wasn't cruel. She was prepared. There's a difference. "Grandma taught me to be clear," I said softly. "And right now you're trying to gaslight me into thinking this is about family." "It's about boundaries." Skylar stormed back to the guest house. I went to work. By 4 p.m., I'd received a surprise visit, and of course, it was Veronica. Because nothing says escalating dysfunction like your father's widow showing up in designer boots and passive-aggressive perfume. "Danielle," she said with her fake-ass smile. "This is getting out of hand. Skylar's devastated." "I know," I said. I watched her throw a box labeled tax returns into the bushes. Real heartbreaking. She followed me into my office without being invited. Sat down, crossed her legs like she owned the place. "You're successful. You've done well for yourself. What's one guest house in the big picture?" That was the pitch. That I had so much I wouldn't miss this tiny piece of it. "Do you want to know how I did well for myself, Veronica?" I asked, sitting across from her. "By not stealing, not squatting, not relying on dead people's promises." Her face twitched. "I have emails," I continued, reaching into the folder I'd prepped in advance. From Skylar to a real estate agent asking how soon she could list the property. From you, inquiring about flipping it into an Airbnb. And oh, this gem. I pulled out a printout. A forged signature attempt on a grant application using my name. "You've been spying?" she gasped. "Nope, just protecting what's mine." She stood up, all grace gone. "Your father would be ashamed." I didn't even flinch. He'd be broke, just like Skylar will be once I press charges. That shut her up. Later that evening, Skylar tried again. This time with tears. Full on my life is falling apart, sobbing outside my window. "We're family," she cried. "You're supposed to help us." "No," I said quietly, stepping onto the porch. "I'm supposed to honor Grandma Ruth's legacy, and she knew exactly who you were." Skylar's tears turned to venom in a flash. "You think this makes you strong? Hoarding everything while we suffer? You're heartless." I tilted my head. "No, I'm just done being your doormat." She spat something under her breath, something about how I'll die alone with money and rose bushes. Then she stormed back inside. Wes didn't say a word. He just looked at me with this weird mix of embarrassment and resentment. Maybe for the first time, he realized Skylar wasn't the victim she pretended to be. I slept like a rock that night. The next morning, the police arrived calmly, professionally, to deliver the official eviction notice. Sarah had filed everything to perfection. I handed over the keys to a locksmith, changed the garage code, and watched from my kitchen as the officer stood outside the guest house with clipped patience. Skylar finally emerged, eyes swollen, voice hoarse. "You'll regret this." "No," I said, sipping my coffee. "But you might." They had until noon to leave. By 11:52 a.m., the last box was shoved into the back of their rusted van. Wes accidentally slammed the sliding door on Skylar's foot. She screamed. He didn't apologize. It was poetic. Mom showed up at the last minute, eyes wide, wearing the same robe from 2 days ago. "This is wrong, Danny," she whispered. "You're breaking up the family." I looked around. Veronica was gone. Skylar was yelling at Wes. The roses were trampled. And suddenly, it hit me. This wasn't a family. It was a fire I'd been feeding for years. I turned to her and said the quiet part out loud. "There's nothing left to break, Mom." "You already picked your side. I'm just finally choosing mine." I thought eviction would be the end of it. Skylar and Wes drove off with their overstuffed van, my mother sobbing into a sleeve, and the guest house finally quiet for the first time in days. I walked through the place after they left, half expecting to find it trashed. It was worse. Pizza boxes on the floor, candle wax melted into the vintage side table, the carpet stained with something pink and sticky. Don't even get me started on what they left in the fridge. Let's just say kombucha should not have fuzz. But the silence was priceless. Or at least, it was until I woke up the next morning to a flurry of texts from friends. Have you seen Skylar's post? She tagged you on TikTok. Girl, you're trending. I opened the app and felt my stomach twist. There she was, sitting on the edge of a motel bed, fake tears in full force, holding a tea mug like she was some kind of tragic heroine from a Lifetime movie. Hey, guys, she sniffled into the camera. I never thought I'd have to share this publicly, but my stepsister evicted me. She threw me and my partner out of our only home, a home our father promised us before he passed. We're basically homeless now. If anyone knows of a place in New York or Boston with a spiritual landlord and natural lighting, please reach out. The caption, family isn't always love. Sometimes it's greed in heels. And just like that, I became Reddit's favorite villain. The heartless real estate mogul who kicked out her grieving sister and her unemployed crypto boyfriend. Skylar spun the story like a pro. There were baby photos of us, which I didn't even know she had, nostalgic throwbacks to our childhood bond, and a GoFundMe titled, Help Skylar and Wes Start Over $5, 112 in donations by noon. I didn't even have time to respond before Veronica jumped into the fray, posting a black and white photo of my dad with a long caption that read like a eulogy, and a courtroom monologue rolled into one. He always said he wanted both his daughters to share the family home. Danielle has forgotten the meaning of love and legacy. I only wish he were here to see what she's done. The comments were a mix of fire emojis and crying faces. People asked for my business page so they could leave bad reviews. Someone even sent me a DM saying, "Hope you sleep well on your blood money, snake." Blood money. All this because I wouldn't let two freeloaders squat in my dead grandmother's house. I called Sarah. She answered on the second ring. Saw it already. I've drafted cease and desist letters. Want me to hit send? I sighed, pacing the kitchen. Not yet. Let them burn their goodwill first. No one wins long-term sympathy from a fake sob story. Sarah paused. You sure? Skylar's milking this like it's an Oscar campaign. I'm sure, I said, looking out at the rose bushes. We let them cook, and then we turn up the heat. By that evening, it got weirder. I got an email from a lawyer. Not my lawyer, representing Skylar and Wes. It was vague, but the message was clear. They were looking into equitable interest claims based on verbal promises made by the deceased and long-standing emotional attachments to the property. I read it twice before laughing out loud. Emotional attachments? You mean the one where Skylar didn't visit Grandma Ruth for the last 2 years of her life because nursing homes are a low-vibe energy zone? Sarah wasn't laughing. We'll crush it. But this could drag. Let it drag, I said. They want a legal battle? They can try affording one. Meanwhile, the first went into PR mode. Not through posts, not through TikToks. I did it the old-fashioned way, with receipts. I started with a simple statement on my personal Facebook, visible only to friends and family. My late grandmother, Ruth Ellis, left me her property per a legally binding will, executed in 2020. Attempts to dispute this via social media are misleading and hurtful. If you want the full story, message me directly. I have documentation. By the end of the day, 10 people had messaged me. Cousins, old neighbors, even my dad's former coworker. I sent them all the same Google Drive link. It had the will, photos of Skylar's damage to the guest house, the texts she sent bragging about turning it into a rental, and screenshots of the emails where she tried forging a transfer document. One by one, people started going quiet. Some even apologized. But the real shift came when someone leaked a video. I didn't post it. I didn't even know it existed. It was doorbell cam footage, a neighbor's, showing Skylar screaming at Wes the night before the eviction. You were supposed to sell the couch, not leave it there. I told everyone we got robbed. Jesus, Wes. And just like that, the GoFundMe started slowing down. The comment section turned. Someone reposted her homeless video with a side-by-side of her Instagram post from last month. Her at a rooftop brunch with the caption, "Manifesting abundance with my fave mimosa blend." Then someone else dug up her Etsy shop selling ancestral healing packages for $299. Reddit had a field day. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the quiet, patient older sister who got tired of being used and snapped. Skylar was rebranded by the internet in 72 hours flat, from spiritual empath to entitled scammer with good lighting. Veronica went quiet. The posts vanished. The GoFundMe was flagged for review. I didn't do a thing. I just waited. Funny how people expose themselves when you give them a stage and a microphone. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text from Wes. "Can we talk?" Alone. I blinked. Wasn't expecting that. I told him to meet me on the front porch. It was safer that way, and more public. I didn't trust him further than he could throw one of those giant beanbags they left behind. He showed up 30 minutes later, head down, hoodie up. "I'm not here to fight," he said quickly. "I just wanted to say I didn't know half of what she was doing. I was in it, yeah, but I didn't know about the forged documents or the will stuff." I just stared at him. He shifted awkwardly. "She's talking about squatters' rights now. Said she's got a new lawyer who thinks she can claim the place if she shows she had intent to reside." I couldn't help it, I laughed, right in his face. "You think a couple nights in the guest house, a pile of candles, and a borrowed key equals legal possession?" He shrugged. "Just thought you should know. You told her that wouldn't work, right?" He hesitated. I told her I was done. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. "What's that?" "Stuff you'll want to see," he said. "Emails, notes, some videos." She was planning this a long time, like even before your dad passed. That made my stomach turn. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. He looked tired, older, like life had knocked the arrogance out of him. "I got swept up in it," he said. "I thought I'd hitched myself to someone who had a plan. Turns out the plan was just lie until people give you things." He left quietly. I didn't invite him in, but I watched him walk back to his beat-up van, shoulders slumped like he'd finally realized the ride was over. That night, I plugged in the flash drive. And what I found? It changed everything. I didn't even wait until morning. As soon as Wes pulled out of the driveway, I plugged a flash drive into my laptop and opened the first folder. It was labeled in all caps, SKYLAR plan, private. Classy. Inside, chaos, emails, notes, half-finished spreadsheets. Even voice memos where Skylar literally talked through her strategy like she was recording a podcast for wannabe grifters. One file stood out. A Word doc titled Long-Term Manifestation Strategy, Estate Goals. Yep, that was the actual title. The first line read, "Goal: secure permanent residence in guesthouse claim, emotional ownership, establish social narrative, build sympathy online if needed." She wrote this like a marketing brief. Bullet points, timelines, a literal list of talking points to use against me, including gems like, "She's always been materialistic." "Grandma didn't like confrontation equals no clear communication." Use Dad's voice messages to imply intent. Oh yeah, there were recordings too. My dad's old voicemails, cherry-picked and edited. One of them had him saying, "One day, the guest house will be yours, sweetheart." But when I checked the original file Wes included, I found the full message. "One day, the guest house will be yours, sweetheart, if Danny agrees. It's hers now. You'll have to work something out." Skylar had cut it right before that second sentence. I sat there staring at the screen, equal parts stunned and not surprised at all. I mean, it sounded like her. But seeing it all mapped out in black and white, it hit differently. There was one more folder, password protected. I texted Wes, "What's the password to the last folder?" He replied instantly, "Try abundance." I rolled my eyes and typed it in by bingo. Inside were 3 video clips, all filmed on her phone. They were longer than the others. I clicked on the first one. Skylar was sitting at a cafe with her mom, Veronica, camera propped discreetly. The audio wasn't perfect, but it was enough. "It doesn't matter what the will says," Veronica said. You just need to make yourself at home. Show you've been living there. Start tagging it in posts. I'll talk to people. Make sure they vouch for it. Skylar laughed. And what if Danny finds out? She always folds when guilt kicks in. Keep your tears ready. Clip 2. Skylar giving Wes a tour of the guest house weeks before the break-in. Once we're in, she said, we file for temporary occupancy. Even if she fights it, we get a few months at least. That's enough time to build our brand. We can run wellness retreats from here. Wellness retreats. In my guest house, I opened the third and final video. This one was quiet. Just Skylar talking directly to the camera like a diary. Worst case scenario, we get kicked out. But we go viral. I mean, eviction? Spiritual coach forced into homelessness? The internet loves that. If Danny plays hardball, she looks like a corporate tyrant. If she caves, we get the house. Win-win. She smiled. Smug. Certain. My hand curled into a fist on the desk. Not from rage. From focus. It all made sense now. Every guilt trip, every post, every calculated tear. This wasn't an emotional reaction. It was a playbook. And I was done playing defense. The next morning, I sent everything to Sarah. Her response? Immediate. Oh, we're not just shutting this down. We're ending it. Within 48 hours, we'd filed a cease and desist for defamation and false claims of inheritance. The clips, screenshots, and forged documents were all neatly packaged in a legal portfolio so airtight, it could have been used in a masterclass on shutting down scammers. But that wasn't all. Sarah had a better idea. We don't just go quiet and clean this up. We let them walk right into it. I raised an eyebrow. You want to bait them? She grinned. They already think they're winning. Let's make the fall public. So we waited. And sure enough, Skylar wasn't done. A few days later, she posted another update, this time with Veronica. A 2-woman sob fest, filmed on a park bench. She called it, When Family Betrays You Twice. More vague allegations. More passive-aggressive poetry in the captions. More people tagging me in the comments like I was some kind of villain straight out of a telenovela. But she made one crucial mistake. She used a snippet of the edited voicemail. Again, in public, Sarah moved fast. We sent a takedown notice and a legal warning to the platform and a direct message to Skylar's attorney, informing them of the doctored clip and the full original we'd be submitting if this went to court. The post vanished within hours. So did the GoFundMe. Donations were refunded. Her supporters ghosted. And her Etsy shop? Suspended. Someone had reported the spiritual cleansing kits for misleading claims. The karma train had left the station, and it wasn't stopping anytime soon. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I hosted a dinner at the main house. Just a few close friends, some old neighbors, and one unexpected guest, my mother. She showed up late, quiet. No fanfare. I didn't ask her why she came. I just pulled out a chair and poured her a glass of wine. Halfway through dinner, while everyone laughed over old stories and the air smelled like rosemary chicken and red wine, she leaned in and whispered, "You were right, I didn't say anything." She looked down at her plate, hands folded like a confession. I kept trying to fix something that was broken from the start. I thought if I kept peace long enough, it would become love. I set down my fork, and it never did, she said. Skylar was never your sister. I just wanted her to be so badly. It was the first honest thing she'd said in years. I let the silence stretch between us before answering. Wanting doesn't make it real. People have to show up. Over and over. Not just when there's something to gain. She nodded slowly. You got that from your grandmother. That I did. The next morning, I got another email from Wes. No subject line, just a message. Skylar's meeting with a new lawyer tomorrow. Still thinks she has a case. You should see who she's working with. Check the attachment. I hesitated, then opened it. A PDF. The firm's name caught my eye immediately. Anderson and Wright. I laughed out loud. They were our firm, the same group we'd partnered with for years on development contracts. They'd be required to disclose any conflict of interest. And once they realized who Skylar was aiming at, they'd drop her like a hot rock. Still, Sarah said, let her try. People like her only learn when they run out of lifelines. We prepared our final move anyway. Sarah called it our preemptive strike. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a petition to the court, an official declaration, backed by all the evidence, requesting protection against future fraudulent claims on the estate. It was like installing a legal electric fence. Skylar and Veronica wouldn't just be blocked from trying again. Any attempt would carry real consequences. Fines, charges, maybe even jail time. Later that night, I took a walk through the garden. The roses were recovering. It hadn't taken long, just pruning, water, and sunlight. Some of the blooms were even brighter than before. Funny how that works. With enough care, even the most damaged things find their way back. As I stood there, barefoot in the grass, phone still in my hand, another message came through. From Skylar. Just one sentence. "You'll regret making me your enemy." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I smiled, and I blocked her. No fanfare, no anger, just peace. Real, earned, silence. It's strange how the silence that follows a storm is almost louder than the storm itself. After I blocked Skylar, the house felt clean, not just physically, spiritually. No more staged crying on the porch. No more messages from Mom asking me to just reconsider. No more emotional blackmail wrapped in fake concern. The quiet wasn't empty. It was earned. But peace, when it comes, doesn't mean the war is over. It just means your opponent is regrouping. Sarah texted me 2 mornings later, confirmed. Skylar filed a civil claim this morning. Guess who's representing her? I already knew. Anderson and Wright, the same firm we'd worked with on zoning and land use cases for years. Skylar had no idea they were on our payroll, that we'd already sent them a notice of potential conflict, that they'd signed our updated client exclusivity clause 6 months ago. Sarah had one word for it: perfect. The court date was set for 2 weeks out. Skylar was suing me for emotional distress and misappropriation of promised property. Veronica filed a separate motion claiming she'd been cut off from her late husband's legacy. It would have been laughable if it weren't so predictable. They didn't want justice. They wanted attention, or leverage, or one last attempt to drag something out of the mess they'd created. And I wasn't afraid of court, because when you've got the truth, the documented, notarized, time-stamped truth, court isn't scary. It's just a formality. In the meantime, I kept my head down. My days were full of meetings, property inspections, contractor updates, and coffee. Lots of coffee. The kind you drink while building something solid. The kind that reminds you all of this is yours and you built it piece by piece. I didn't speak to Mom. She didn't call. I think she knew that this wasn't about picking sides anymore. It was about survival, hers, mine, Skylar's. And for the first time, I wasn't going to help her survive at my expense. Court day came on a windy Thursday. It was held at the local courthouse. Small, brick exterior, metal detectors at the entrance that always beep no matter what you're wearing. I showed up in black slacks, a muted green blouse, and the necklace my grandmother gave me before she passed. Wear something rooted, she used to say. You don't need to sparkle when you're standing in truth. Skylar arrived in a flowing white dress, like she was going to a garden party. Not a legal hearing. Veronica looked like she was headed to a funeral, all black, veil, and everything. Wes didn't show. Sarah and I sat calmly at our table. She laid out the documents like cards in a winning hand. The judge, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense, opened with a simple line: "We are here today to determine whether the plaintiffs have any legal claim to the guest house and surrounding estate, or whether the defendant's ownership is both lawful and undisputed." Skylar's lawyer, a junior associate probably trying to make partner, stood up and launched into a dramatic retelling of their suffering. She spoke of betrayal, loss, and an oral promise made by a dying man to his grieving daughter. The judge didn't flinch. "Do you have any evidence of this promise? Any written document? Witness? Recording?" Skylar's lawyer nodded confidently. "Yes, Your Honor." A voicemail. They played the edited clip. It was the same one Skylar had posted online, my father's voice, soft and sentimental. "One day the guest house will be yours, sweetheart." That was it. Sarah stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit the full version of that voicemail into evidence." She handed over the unedited file, the one Wes had given us. The courtroom went quiet as the rest played. One day, the guest house will be yours, sweetheart, if Danny agrees. It's hers now. You'll have to work something out. Skylar didn't look up. Veronica clenched her jaw. Sarah continued. Calm, surgical. She presented the will, the estate plan, the property deeds, the tax documents, all showing the estate passed solely to me. She laid out the timeline of Skylar and Veronica's attempts to forge, manipulate, and emotionally pressure me into giving it up. Then came the videos. The court watched Veronica and Skylar, in their own words, talk about manipulating public sympathy, about staging a narrative, about getting a few months at least. Skylar's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge denied it. 20 minutes later, it was over. The judge dismissed both claims with prejudice, which meant they couldn't try again. He declared me the sole uncontested owner of the entire estate. He also warned Skylar and Veronica that further attempts to file false claims could result in charges for fraud and harassment. Skylar finally looked up at me. There were no tears, no screaming, just that blank look of someone who had run out of cards to play. Veronica turned and walked out without a word. I stayed in my seat. I breathed in. I exhaled. Not just relief, release. The next few days were strangely quiet. No more legal notices. No more social media posts. Even Skylar's TikTok account had gone dark. People say winning in court doesn't feel good. That justice is cold and clinical. They're wrong. It doesn't feel good like revenge. It feels good like freedom. That weekend, I went into the guest house for the first time without checking over my shoulder. I opened every window, let the light in, burned sage, not to erase them, but to reclaim the space. Then I started making plans, not just to restore it, but to transform it. For years, I donated quietly to local programs, transitional housing, women's shelters, financial literacy workshops. But this place, this guest house, could be something. I called Sarah. I want to set up a foundation, I told her. In Grandma's name. What kind of foundation? One that helps women who've been forced out of their homes. Not because they did something wrong, but because someone else made them feel small. She was quiet for a second. Then I love that. We started drafting the paperwork that afternoon. By the end of the month, the guest house had a new name. The Ruth Project. It offered transitional housing, free career coaching, resume building workshops, and financial education, especially for women who are exiting toxic family dynamics or escaping emotional abuse disguised as family obligations. The first resident, Mia, moved in the following spring. She was 27, fresh out of a bad situation with a controlling aunt who'd taken her in after her mom died, only to use her for free childcare and guilt trips. When she toured the space, she looked overwhelmed. "You sure it's okay if I stay here?" she asked, standing in the kitchen, hands shaking. I smiled. "You're not just allowed, you're welcome." A few weeks later, I got an email. From Skylar, no subject, no attachments, just this: "I see what you're doing with the guest house. I didn't understand what Grandma saw in you before. I do now. I hope it's not too late for me to become someone different. Thank you for not letting me steal what wasn't mine." I wouldn't have learned otherwise. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I'd already closed that door. And some chapters end without applause. Just quiet growth in the dark. It's been 5 years. 5 springs, 5 winters, 5 chances to sit on my grandmother's porch and remember why I fought so hard for this place. The guest house looks different now, not because I renovated it, though I did, but because of what it holds. Not furniture, not old memories, not conflict, but people, stories, healing. The Ruth Project has welcomed 26 women since its launch. Some stayed a month, others stayed a year. They arrived with nothing but duffel bags and protective walls so thick it took weeks before they believed we weren't going to ask them for something in return. We didn't. Grandma Ruth would have loved it. The gardens changed too. The roses, those same bushes Skylar nearly flattened with a pizza box, now bloom more often than they ever did before. 3 times a year. Like clockwork, vibrant, resilient, no matter the weather. I think Grandma planned it that way. Roses that refuse to stay down. Just like me. I keep the rocking chair on the front porch exactly where she left it. It creaks a little now, but the rhythm is still the same. Sometimes, when the sun dips low and the light hits the hydrangeas just right, I can almost feel her hand on my shoulder. You see now, I imagine her saying, "It was never about the house. It was about what you'd build when you finally stopped giving your energy to the wrong people." And I do see now, not just the house, the legacy. People still bring up Skylar sometimes, usually in whispers, as if I'll flinch. I don't. Last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a yoga studio upstate, a small, quiet place. Not one of her healing collectives. The kind of job that demands you show up every day, on time, and actually do something. Word is, she's managing the studio now. Maybe the structure helped. Maybe she finally got tired of pretending life owed her something. We haven't spoken since the email she sent about the Ruth project. I never wrote back. Some things don't need replies, just distance. Peace. Veronica moved to Florida shortly after the court case. Started over, I think. She posted a lot of sunsets and vague quotes about forgiveness. Letting go doesn't mean you forget. It means you move forward. That kind of stuff. She blocked me on Facebook after someone tagged her in an article about the foundation. I guess even the truth stings if it's written in ink. Wes sent me a postcard once. From Colorado. It was short, thank you. I didn't know how lost I was until I saw someone say no. He didn't leave a return address. Honestly, I didn't need one. As for Mom, that's been a slower thaw. After the court hearing, she disappeared for a while. Not physically, emotionally. I think she needed time to reckon with all the ways she'd enabled the mess without ever meaning to. The little moments where she prioritized comfort over clarity, where she let someone else's tears drown out the truth. She started therapy, voluntarily. That alone felt like a miracle. We meet for lunch once a month now. Usually something simple, grilled cheese, soup, iced tea. She still reaches for the salt shaker even when the food doesn't need it. I used to find that annoying. Now, I think it's endearing. She came to the house last fall for the first time in years, stood in the garden, touched the roses gently. "They're still here," she said. I smiled. "They always come back." She nodded slowly. "I think I'm starting to understand why your grandmother left it all to you." That moment meant more than I let on. Because acknowledgement isn't always about apology. Sometimes it's just the quiet recognition that you see someone differently now, and it matters. The house itself has become something sacred, not because it's big or historic or sits on prime land, but because it was defended, protected, honored. I walk its hallways differently now. Not like someone trying to prove they deserve to be here, but like someone who knows they do. And in the evenings, when the garden is still and the wind carries the scent of old lavender and new earth, I sit in that creaky rocking chair and listen, not for drama, but for peace. I remember something Grandma once told me, back when I was 15, angry at my dad for choosing Veronica, and convinced everything good in life came with a catch. "You don't have to explain your boundaries," she said, pouring tea like she was offering a sermon. "You just have to hold them." I didn't get it then. Thought it was just another one of her wise-sounding lines. But now I live by it. Skylar thought love meant access. That being family gave her a key to anything I had. Veronica believed manipulation was a form of power. If you cry hard enough, people bend. But Grandma? She knew the truth. That real power isn't loud. It's consistent. It's standing your ground without raising your voice. It's keeping the gate closed when someone tries to walk through it with muddy shoes and a sob story. It's planting roses where people once threw trash. The women who stay in the guest house now, they ask me about it sometimes. Why I started the foundation. Why I cared enough to make this place for them. I never go into the whole story. Not really. It's not about me anymore. But sometimes I say this, someone once tried to steal my peace. So I built something that made sure they couldn't steal anyone else's. It always lands. Because they get it. They've lived it. One of them, Mia, our first guest, now volunteers here every weekend. She helps organize incoming donations and does career coaching for the newer residents. She's calm, kind, steady. Nothing like the girl who showed up clutching a plastic bag full of old receipts and fear. Last week, she brought me a framed quote, handwritten. It said, "I didn't bloom because I was planted in the right soil. I bloomed because I refused to rot in the wrong one. It's on my desk now, right next to Grandma's last letter. So yeah, 5 years later, this place still stands. Not because no one tried to take it from me, but because I decided I was done giving it away. Every rose, every brick, every breath of quiet that fills these walls is a reminder. You don't have to be soft to be good. You don't have to stay quiet to be kind. And you definitely don't have to share your inheritance with people who only ever showed up when it was convenient. I'm not bitter. I'm rooted. There's a difference. Story 2. Your stepsister now follows your research methodology. As casually as if he were debating whether she deserves it more than you know how to properly market it, my father's voice crackled across the phone. In my Stanford lab, I stood clutching my phone until my knuckles became white. The discovery was the result of 5 years of research that had taken up all of my time since graduate school. As though it were his to give, my father had just handed away. I'm Alexandra Carter, a 32-year-old biochemical researcher with a focus on tailored medication delivery methods. My research has the potential to transform cancer treatment by increasing its efficacy and reducing its adverse effects. Madison, my 25-year-old stepsister, whose biggest accomplishment was receiving an MBA from an online university, had recently attempted to inherit Carter Pharmaceuticals from my father's CEO. That is not possible, I said, maintaining my composure in spite of the anger that was growing within of me. You cannot transfer the patent. It is, of course, he sneered. Your research was financed by Carter Pharmaceuticals. The business owns everything you create. I also choose who is in charge of what as CEO. His delay allowed me to imagine his smug expression. Madison is more business savvy than you are. She is aware of the market. I looked at the email from the United States on my computer screen. 3 months ago, the patent office sat open, verifying receipt. My father was unaware that I had anticipated this. Since he married Madison's mother 2 years ago, he had been methodically ignoring me and progressively removing me from important initiatives in spite of my experience. Well, I answered cautiously, Madison's attempt to monetize research should be enjoyable, I hope. She is unable to comprehend. What else is there? I could see by his pores that he had anticipated complaints, tears, and maybe even pleading. He was taken aback by my cool acquiescence. That's all. I'll forward the transfer documents to legal. I said, good luck with that, and hung up. I quickly texted Sarah Martinez, my lawyer, as soon as the line died. He performed just as we had anticipated. I then took a seat at my desk, trembling hands. Out of expectation, not fear. The wheels that I had started months before were about to spin. I recalled the day at the company's annual charity event when my father presented us to his new wife, Diane, and her daughter, Madison. When was the day when everything changed? I just presented the results of my initial study to prospective investors, and they responded overwhelmingly. However, my father diverted the subject to Madison's recent MBA graduation rather than praising me. As the company's head of strategic development, Madison will be joining. He had stated that she would most likely contribute to modernizing our strategy and bringing in new ideas. I saw Madison emerge as the new golden child as my years of arduous effort, my PhD in biochemistry, and my published research all vanished into the background. I first attempted to work with her to impart my industry and research protocol expertise. But it soon became apparent that Madison was not interested in learning. Instead, she wanted control. There were signs. My research team was progressively moved. My money was subtly cut, and I was unable to access specific labs. After that, I began to observe Madison at discussions regarding my medication distribution system, taking notes and posing queries that exposed her basic ignorance of the underlying science. I got in touch with Sarah, a former college buddy who specializes in intellectual property law. In this way, keep a record of everything she suggested. Every email, limitation, modification, and above all, submitting your own patent application separately from Carter Pharmaceuticals. I meticulously documented every facet of my study that wasn't directly supported by corporate funds over the course of many evenings and weekends. The actual breakthrough had occurred on my own schedule, with my own lab apparatus, painstakingly recorded and confirmed by impartial observers. A response from Sarah's USPTO filed paperwork buzzed across my phone. You have a strong independent patent application. The long-awaited probe will begin when they seek to transfer. I took out a hefty folder called Project Shield from my drawer. Every email, document, every piece of evidence demonstrating how Madison and my father had systematically attempted to dissuade me and steal my study. According to the official business records, Carter Pharmaceuticals provided funding for some of the initial phases of my study, but the main discoveries and techniques were created on my own. Another SMS from Sarah Batu, your stepsister's alleged business savvy. I performed some research. She doesn't even have accreditation for her online MBA program. It didn't surprise me. Madison has always prioritized appearances above content. Her LinkedIn posts on being a female pioneer in the pharmaceutical industry took up more of her time than her real studies of pharmaceutical development. The phone rang in my workplace. Madison's prolongation. I knew what she would say, so I let it go to voicemail. Her message was precisely what I had anticipated, as it turned out. We must talk about the transfer of your study project, Alex. It's obvious that you haven't thought about my monetization suggestions. Call me fat. Aware that the following several hours would be critical, I began to assemble my belongings. An automated inquiry into the beginnings and progression of the study would be triggered by the patent challenge. Every claim would be validated and every document examined. My phone buzzed once more while I was packing my laptop, this time indicating that the company's legal department had sent me an email. Immediate IP transfer documentation required was the subject line. Without opening it, I sent it to Sarah. I had some time to think about how we got here on the elevator journey to the parking garage. 30 years ago, my father and mother founded Carter Pharmaceuticals. She was the genius of science. He took care of business. I committed myself to carrying on her work after she passed away from cancer 10 years ago, because I thought my father and I could honor her legacy together. However, after meeting Diane, he underwent a transformation. Suddenly, the company's market value took precedence over its scientific base. Protocols were shortened, and research timelines were hurried. The last straw was Madison's arrival. All of a sudden, rather than demonstrating their scientific value, each person had to demonstrate their marketability. Just as I got to my car, my father called me once more. I left it on voicemail this time. Before long, he would have a lot to say to me. But first, he had to face some harsh realities about what he had just attempted to reveal. Sarah was waiting with her team at her office, so I drove directly there. Timelines and documents littered the walls of the conference room. The paper trail we'd been building for months. Right on schedule, Sarah said as I walked in. Your father just tried to file the patent transfer paperwork. As expected, it triggered immediate flags with the USPTO. Since your independent application is already on file, how long until they realize? I asked, setting my laptop on the conference table. It probably already have. The USPTO would have immediately notified them of the existing patent application. Sarah smiled. I guess your father is having a very interesting conversation with his legal team right now. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from my father. What have you done? I showed it to Sarah, who nodded approvingly. Excellent. Let them sweat while we prepare our response. We have meetings set up with the patent office tomorrow morning. Your documentation is impeccable. They won't be able to claim corporate ownership of your independent research. I thought about Madison probably sitting in her new office, planning how to take credit for work she couldn't begin to understand. I thought about my father, who'd been so quick to dismiss my contributions in favor of his new family's ambitions. What happens next? I asked Sarah, though I already knew the answer. Next, we watched them try to explain how they plan to transfer a patent they don't own. The USPTO takes attempted patent fraud very seriously. Your father's going to have to choose between admitting he tried to steal your research or claiming he didn't do due diligence before attempting to transfer intellectual property. Either way, it's not going to look good for Carter Pharmaceuticals. My phone kept buzzing. Calls from Madison, my father, the company's legal team. I silenced it and focused on the documents in front of me. For the first time in years, I felt completely certain about my path forward. I signed the incorporation papers, officially bringing Carter Biotech into existence. A final text from my father. "We need to talk now," I grinned. "Yes," I tagged back. "We certainly do." The next morning, Carter Pharmaceuticals' legal department was in chaos. I watched from across the street as lawyers rushed in and out of the building, carrying stacks of papers and wearing expressions of barely concealed panic. My father's attempted patent transfer had backfired spectacularly. Sarah sat beside me in her car, calmly reviewing our documentation one last time before our meeting with the USPTO representatives. "Your father has called 6 times in the last hour," she noted, glancing at my phone. "Should we hear what he has to say?" I shook my head, watching another group of lawyers hurry into the building. He had plenty of chances to talk before he tried to steal my research. Let him sweat my phone buzz again. "Madison." This time her message made me laugh out loud. "This is just a misunderstanding. Daddy was attempting to help you by putting more qualified individuals in charge of your project. Don't ruin everything because you're jealous." "More qualified?" Sarah snorted, reading over my shoulder. "Does she even understand what your research involves? She thinks drug delivery systems are like Uber for medicine." I answered dryly. "Last month, she suggested we should make an app for it." Our meeting with the USPTO wasn't until 10 a.m., but we'd arrive early to watch the drama unfold through the glass walls of Carter Pharmaceuticals' lobby. I could see people gathering in the conference room. My father, Madison, Diane, and what looked like half the legal team. "Ready?" Sarah inquired as another call from my father lighted up my phone. I nodded, grabbing our files. "More than ready." We went into the building just as Madison sprinted for the elevator. She stopped short when she spotted me, her meticulously kept composure faltering for a minute. "Alex, I'm grateful. You need to call off whatever this is. Daddy's upset and you're making us look awful." She grabbed for my hand, but I stepped aside. "Making you appear awful." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean like attempting to take a pet? You have no right to steal." She laughed, but it sounded strained. "Avoid being theatrical. We are related. Everything in this business belongs to the family." I gently said, "Partner Biotech isn't family property. My research isn't either." Her expertly styled eyebrows furrowed in bewilderment. "Carter? What?" My father's voice blasted across the lobby before I could reply. "Alexandra taught in my workspace. Right now." He was standing in the doorway of his corner office when I turned around. Anger made his cheeks flush. I briefly saw him as I had when I was younger, the menacing person whose favor I had always desired. However, that enchantment was broken. Sarah actually moved forward. "Any conversations must take place with legal representation present. In 20 minutes, we will meet with officials from the USPTO. Is the main conference room where we should all meet?" My father recognized Sarah, and I saw his expression darken. He had previously met her at business functions, but I don't think he ever thought she would be in this position. He hissed, "This is a family matter." "No," I corrected him. "It's a legal issue. You attempted to transfer an unowned patent." "That is deception." Like a thunderclap, the phrase lingered in the air. A number of workers who were walking through the lobby paused to gaze. Madison had a pallid face. Conference space. My dad turned on his heel and snapped, "Now everyone." As individuals took their seats and attorneys shuffled documents, the following few minutes were a flurry of activity. Sarah sat next to me while I sat across from my father. After a moment of hesitation, Madison sat down next Diane, who was making every effort to appear worried rather than irritated. The officials from the USPTO showed up exactly on schedule. 2 somber-looking women identified themselves as Miss Andrea Martinez and Dr. Patricia Wang. They got right to the point without wasting any time. Dr. Wang started, "We're here to deal with a serious issue. Carter Pharmaceuticals made an attempt to give Madison Carter ownership of patent application NOAA 63-197-421 yesterday. However, 3 months ago, Dr. Alexandra Carter submitted this patent on her own initiative, unaffiliated with any corporations. There must be an error." My dad cut me off. "Alexandra carried out all of her studies under the auspices of Carter Pharmaceuticals. The business owns any resulting patents." Sliding a paper across the table, Sarah grinned. "In fact, We have a wealth of evidence demonstrating that the major discoveries were created on their own, with Dr. Carter's own time and resources. My father and Madison endured agony for the next hour, while Sarah carefully laid forth our case. The independent lab logs, which documented the restrictions placed on my access, emails demonstrating the methodical effort to elevate me. Everything presented a clear image. We also have proof that Miss Madison Carter has been misrepresenting her credentials, Sarah added. The company's attempt to transfer complicated biological patents under her supervision raises severe concerns because her purported MBA is from an unaccredited college. Madison's cheeks turned crimson instead of pale. That is irrelevant. Isn't my degree as good as Alexis's? Quietly, I inquire. Then, since you're so suited to take over, could you possibly explain to everyone here how my targeted medicine delivery system operates? The ensuing hush was deafening. Madison turned to my father for support, but he was pale and looking at the papers in front of him. Dr. Wang cleared her throat. It is evident from the evidence that Dr. Alexander Carter, acting as an independent researcher, submitted patent application NOA 63, 197th, 421 in a lawful manner. It would be patent fraud to try to transfer it without her permission. We'll also need to look into the circumstances of this attempted transfer, Ms. Martinez continued. Fraud with patents is a grave violation. When he did glance up, my father's face was a mixture of despair and rage. You cannot harm the business, our family, or both, Alexandra. My voice was repeated, cold but steady. Are you referring to the family that attempted to pilfer my life's work? The family that rejected me in favor of someone who doesn't even know the fundamentals of biochemistry. I was attempting to keep you safe. He blew up. Despite your prowess in the lab, you lack commercial acumen. Madison is skilled at making money off of studies, just like she did with her phony MBA. I couldn't stop myself, but the words came out sharper than I meant. Or perhaps she intended to make money off of studies that she doesn't even understand. When things didn't go her way, Madison's go-to tactic was to cry. Diane glared at me and put an arm around her. She snapped, "There's no need to be cruel." Madison was merely attempting to assist. Assist? I chuckled. By taking away my suffering, by attempting to claim the credit for my years of labor. Enough. My dad hit the table with his hand. Alexandra, what do you want? Cash? A raise? Decide on a price. Sarah and I looked at each other. We had been waiting for this moment. Actually, as I slid the incorporation documents for Carter Biotech across the table, I said, nothing from Carter Pharmaceuticals is what I want. I launched my own business, my future, my patents, and my research. They all accompany me. There was complete silence. With shaking hands, my father picked up the papers, his face getting redder as he read them. When he finally said, "You can't compete with us," his voice lacked conviction. "We have the connections and the resources," I retorted. "You have Madison's app-making expertise. The real science is in my possession. Let's examine which is more important to investors." As Sarah and I exited the building, my phone buzzed with email from an investor who had been thrilled about my study at that fateful event. The subject line read, "Interested in funding Carter Biotech?" I grinned, showing it to Sarah. The future was already looking brighter than the past. "Ready to change the world?" she asked. "More than ready," I answered. The first month of creating Carter Biotech passed in a whirl of meetings, paperwork, and late nights. I had acquired temporary lab space at a biotech incubator, and many of my old research team members had joined me, eager to continue our work without corporate interference. I was examining grant applications when my phone buzzed with an unexpected number. Dr. Alexander Carter speaking. "Alexandra, it's Charles Montgomery from the FDA Advisory Board." My heart skipped a beat. Montgomery was a legendary figure in the regulation of pharmaceuticals. "I've been informed that you left Carter Pharmaceuticals. You're causing quite a stir in the field." I sat up straight in my chair. "I'm hoping it's the study, not the family drama, but making a splash." He laughed. "If we're being honest, both. But the research is the reason I'm calling. Your intended delivery method? It's amazing. We want you to give a presentation at the Innovation Summit the following month." Sarah rushed into my office, her expression tight, before I could reply. Now, switch on the financial news, Alex. I hurriedly placed Montgomery on speaker and opened my laptop's newsfeed. Standing at a platform in the Carter Pharmaceuticals foyer, my father's visage covered the screen. We are pleased to present our innovative new medication delivery method, developed by Madison Carter, our brilliant head of strategic development, he said. In my hand, the coffee mug fell to the ground. Is it where I believe it to be? Sharply, Montgomery inquired. They're attempting to pilfer my study. As Madison approached the podium in a lab coat that looked like a costume, I said, looking on in horror. They were declaring it to be theirs. We anticipate receiving FDA approval in a few months. Madison was reading from note cards with great attention. Our in-house technology delivers therapeutic agents straight to disease cells via targeted molecular recognition. That's what I said, I muttered. That comes from my application for a patent. Sarah was on her phone already. Judge Harrison, come get me. Indeed, I know what time it is. This is an emergency injunctive scenario. Montgomery's voice sliced through the pandemonium. Alexandra, I'm going to hang up now because I anticipate I'll be engaged in the official reaction to this. But off the record, nail them to the wall. The following 2 hours were a flurry. Sarah's team moved for an emergency injunction. I acquired every piece of paperwork demonstrating the genesis of my study. The biotech community hummed with bewilderment and conjecture. Around midnight, my father finally phoned. Bold move, my voice responded. Chilly. He sounded exhausted as he replied, This could have been avoided. You had the option to stay, a member of the family company. You pushed our hand instead. On national television, forced your hand into committing patent fraud. It isn't deception. Everything you did while working here is ours if it's our research. You are aware that's untrue. I fired back. Did you see the paperwork? My independent plan was confirmed by the USPTO. Not only is what you're doing unethical, it's against the law. It's business. He lost his temper. Our stock price has already increased as a result of Madison's disclosure. We will have a solid market position by the time any legal issues are resolved. How can you possibly get away with this? I think you ought to think about returning, he remarked. He lowered his voice a little. We still have time to make this right and reunite as a family. I considered how heartbroken my mother would be to witness his transformation. As soon as you attempted to steal my work, we ceased to be a family. The line died. The following morning, Sarah came early with news. The emergency injunction was granted by Judge Harrison. Until a full hearing is held, Carter Pharmaceuticals must stop making any public statements regarding the delivery system. That won't repair the harm. I showed her my inbox, which was filled with worried emails from possible investors. They are confusing the market and leading people to doubt the validity of my findings. Then we retaliate. Not only in terms of the law, we must share our tale. She took her iPad out. An interview with the Wall Street Journal is desired. Meet your biotechnology too. People need to hear the facts from the actual scientists behind the studies. I hesitated. I had always enjoyed letting my art speak for itself. But now, Alex, Sarah replied gently, your father is depending on you. Being quiet, being professional. That's how they'll get away with this. A strong offensive can occasionally be the greatest defense. She was correct. I got down with a journal reporter that afternoon and filled her in on everything my mother's legacy, being passed up for Madison, and the attempted patent theft. I explained the science to her, pointing out the sections that were the result of my own independent study. The following morning, the news broke. Daughter of a biotech battle says her father's business attempted to steal cancer research. The scientific world sprung into action. My account of events was supported by former coworkers. Similar accounts of corporate stealing attempts were revealed by other academics. Madison made an effort to minimize the harm by setting up interviews to explain her position, but she broke down when asked simple technical questions, making it painfully clear that she was ignorant of the science she claimed to have created. Then the shocking news arrived. In a statement, USPTO Dr. Wang confirmed the inquiry into Carter Pharmaceuticals' attempted transfer and my independent patent application. The stock price of the corporation fell precipitously. Diane unexpectedly showed up when my colleagues and I were in the lab doing experiments. Without preface, she continued, "You're ruining your father. Do you want it that way?" I put my pipette down gently. "He's ruining his own life." Simply said, "I'm not going to be collateral damage." He started this business from nothing. He and my mother constructed it. She based it on actual research, not deception and theft, after I made corrections. Dan's immaculate exterior gave up a little. "Tell me what you want, please." "Cash. An apology in public. Set a fee to put a stop to this." I observed her beautiful jewelry and fancy clothing, which were both financed by the business. My mother helped start. What's mine is what I desire, my prestige, my patents, and my research. "No more, no less. You're being obstinate." "No," I interrupted her. "I'm telling the truth. This family doesn't appear to know how to do it anymore." Following her departure, Dr. Park, one of my researchers, cautiously came up. "The initial trials, Dr. Carter. This is something you may want to see. The outcomes exceeded our expectations." The delivery method was demonstrating previously unheard of precision in identifying cancer cells while sparing healthy tissue. Patents were no longer the only issue here. "This has the potential to save lives." Sarah texted me, and my phone chimed. "Now switch on CNBC." Madison was interviewing again, but this time there was a difference. She fidgeted with her papers and appeared anxious. "Several sources have questioned your qualifications and your role in developing this technology," said interviewer Miss Carter. "Could you elaborate on the specifics of your contribution?" Madison lost his temper. "I contributed to the monetization strategy and the business side. However, you assert that you created the delivery system itself." "That's me," Dad said. She sobbed and fled from the camera. Carter Pharmaceuticals clarified in a statement within hours that Madison had supervised the technology, but not created it. However, the harm had already been done. They lost all credibility. Dr. James Chen, the chief of research at Carter Pharmaceuticals and my father's oldest friend, came to my lab that evening. He looked around and remarked, "Your mother would be proud. You have her talent for noticing what others overlooked," she would constantly say. "Were you aware?" I asked. "I suspected. Things change once your father marries Dan." Suddenly, everything was about immediate gains, perception of the market. Speaking of science, secondary. "Why didn't you speak up?" "I ought to have," he said. "Now, though, I'm speaking. The majority of the research team is interested in working for you. The work we were doing at the labs we could save, and my lab caught my attention. This was what my mother had wanted. Real science, real progress, genuine honesty." "One other thing," Sarah said. "You did that interview. In the scientific world, it's becoming viral. You're becoming a symbol for women in science standing up against corporate theft. You're being referred to as the biotech industry's future." I smiled, thinking of Madison in her costume, like lab coat, pretending to be something she wasn't. "No," I said, "I'm just being good. I've always been my mother's daughter." The FDA investigation into Carter Pharmaceuticals revealed more than just attempted patent theft. Internal audits uncovered rushed trials, manipulated data, and a pattern of cutting corners that stretched back to shortly after my father's marriage to Diane. I was talking with possible investors when Sarah, flushed with enthusiasm, exploded in her face. "Alexa, turn on the news immediately!" The headline running across the screen made my heart stop. Amidst the probe, Carter, the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, resigned. My father was reciting a prepared statement while appearing frustrated and dejected. "I am announcing my immediate resignation as CEO of Carter Pharmaceuticals due to the recent events and the pending FDA inquiry. I admit that the business has deviated from its original values while I have been in charge." The investors' representatives from 3 key venture capital firms wash with eager curiosity. "Well," said Victoria Chang, the principal investor, "I'd say this makes our decision simpler. Dr. Carter, your mother created Carter Pharmaceuticals on scientific honesty. From what we've observed, you're doing the same with Carter Biotech. 2 hours later, I had $50 million in series of grants and a clear way ahead for my study. My phone buzzed constantly with messages former colleagues, industry contacts, even old family friends. But one message to thyself: can we have a conversation? Madison. I nearly erased it, but my curiosity got the better of me. We decided to meet at a peaceful cafe that is distant from both of our offices. Madison's appearance changed. No expensive clothing, no hair done to perfection. Somehow, she appeared smaller, more authentic. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as I sat down. I have to say it even though I know it won't make anything better. I looked at her face, looking for the manipulation I had become accustomed to. Rather, I discovered what appeared to be sincere regret. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "You must have known you'd be revealed eventually." Her gaze was fixed on her coffee. "It sounded so easy, Daddy. He said you were being selfish, that family businesses have to remain together. I believed him because I wanted to think I could be what he desired." She raised her head, eyes moist. "What you did never made sense to me. The research, the science. It was like a strange language, but I wanted so desperately to matter. You attempted to take something that you didn't comprehend. I persuaded myself that it was simply the redistribution of family resources and not theft." She wiped her eyes. "God, I sound just like him, stupid." Before I could react, my phone rang with an urgent message from Sarah. "FDA report falling in 10 minutes. It's worse than we thought." The report was devastating. Years of hurried experiments, falsified information, and disregard for safety precautions. The shares of Carter Pharmaceuticals fell sharply. An emergency meeting was announced by the board. Madison used her phone to read the news. Her face was going pale. She muttered that he knew. "Daddy was aware of everything. He was so anxious to share my version of your research because of this. He needed a victory to divert his attention from the impending threat. You served as his shield as well. I understood that if something went wrong, you would be held accountable as the naive newbie who handled everything poorly." Her cheeks were wet with tears. I looked at her like a fool. My rage turned into something akin to sympathy. "Indeed, you were. But you weren't the only one he manipulated." Once more, my phone buzzed. "Chen, Dr. Alexandra, the Borgias cast ballots. The home is being cleaned. Your dad and the whole executive group, they wish to speak with you." "Me? Why?" "Their goal is to rebuild the company's reputation. They're wondering about the meaning of having Robert Carter's daughter. Rebuild Catherine's daughter." I reflected on my mother, the business she had founded, and the values she had taught me. Then my thoughts turned to Carter Biotech, our work, and the lives we could save. Inform them that I am honored. However, I already had a business that was founded on the same values my mother held dear. Madison was watching me. "You won't be returning?" "No. However, it might be time for you to construct something of your own. 2. This time, something genuine." Later that evening, as I worked late in my lap, I had one final visitor. My father. He appeared worn out and elderly. Nothing like the frightening man who tried to steal my findings months ago. "I assume you're pleased now," he replied, sliding into a chair. "The great Robert Carter, brought down by his own daughter. Did you bring yourself down?" I corrected him. "I just wouldn't allow you to take me along. I was attempting to safeguard the firm." "No," I cut him off. "You were attempting to protect yourself. Mom established that corporation on scientific honesty, on assisting others. You transformed it into a shell game of fast gains and corner cutting." He shuddered at the mention of my mother, Catherine. "She would be disappointed with me, wouldn't she?" "Yes," I answered quietly. "She would. And you would make you happy now? Cash, control of the firm." I gestured around my lap. "This brings me joy. Actual study, actual science, actual advancement. I cherish all my mother taught me." For the first time, he truly saw it as he gazed about. The wall of whiteboards filled with intricate mathematics, the industrious researchers, and the cutting-edge technology. "You did it," he remarked quietly. "Did you build all of this yourself?" "Thank you, but no." He got up slowly. "There's probably no way to resolve this. I considered all of the deception, deceit, and treachery. Not between us. But it's still possible to mend yourself. Be honest. Accept responsibility. Become someone your mother would have been pleased with." I sat in my lap after he left, reflecting on everything that had transpired. In an attempt to give up my life's work, my father made me create something greater, something I really own. There, Sarah discovered me. The board's dealing with the FDA breaches a few hours later. Putting the new supervision into effect, they are discussing changing the company's name and starting over. Good, I said. It need one. And us? The outcomes of the most recent experiments are astounding. The FDA is expected to approve us months earlier than expected. I smiled, thinking of my mother, of her commitment to actual science. Then let's continue. A number of people are awaiting this treatment. We can save lives. Saving things, Sarah mentioned. Madison gave a call. She's enrolled in community college studying basic chemistry. Says she wants to learn the science this time, not simply pretend. I considered the weight of expectations, the bravery required to start afresh, and Madison's tears at a cafe. But I said it honestly for her. I got at the laboratory early the next morning. Looking out the windows at the morning, there was a tiny bundle on my desk. On the first page was my mother's old lab notebook that Dr. Chen had provided. I had never seen the words she had written before. To my Alexandra, who views the world as it may be rather than as it is, never allow someone to take away your dreams or brightness. They don't realize how much you can do. Mom, love. I felt more connected to her than I had in years as I ran my finger over her handwriting. Somehow, she had known that I would eventually need these words. Sarah showed up at my doorway, prepared to make a difference. I smiled, picking up my mother's notebook, more than ready. Let's show them what real innovation looks like. I was filled with thankfulness as I looked at my team, the job we were doing, and the future we were creating. Because getting even isn't always the greatest kind of retaliation, it's about improving.